Can you believe that these songs are turning 60 years old? In 1965, they shook the world, and even today, they make hearts vibrate as if time hasn't passed. Get ready for a musical journey, where we'll relive 10 legendary anthems that remain as alive as they were on the first day. Some you'll sing without even thinking, and others will leave you with your mouth wide open. How many will you recognize? Let's begin. Number 10. I Can't Get No, Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones. Released in May 1965, this is a song that left its mark in an era where it was almost mandatory to take a side between the two best rock bands in history. This song became the anthem of youthful rebellion, in a time when you absolutely had to be a fan of a rock band like the Beatles or the Rolling Stones to belong. Satisfaction is a classic, an anthem, the song that catapulted them to fame. With its iconic guitar riff, Keith Richards created one of the most recognizable melodies in the history of rock. Mick Jagger's voice, loaded with frustration and attitude, added to the impact of lyrics that reflected the discontent of an entire generation. A curiosity is that the riff came to Keith Richards while he was sleeping. It was the early morning of May 7, 1965, at the New Fort Harrison Hotel in Clearwater, when a very young Keith Richards, 1 year old, before falling asleep after a long and exhausting day of inspiration, picked up his guitar, turned on the cassette recorder, and played the first bars of what could be a new song. Mick Jagger himself said, "We went from being just another band to being an immense, monstrous band. A title and a captivating riff, a great guitar sound that captured the spirit of those times very well." Lyrics are a harsh critique of capitalism. It was a denunciation of the savage capitalism they had Third American tour, and it portrayed a teenager of the 60s tormented by the frustration of his generation, with some highly sexually charged. Its phrase, "I can't get no satisfaction," symbolized the non-conformism of an entire rebellious generation. The critics were slow to consecrate it. It's considered the band's best recording. Yet despite its sales success, quite a few years for music critics to recognize its worth. In 2004, a jury that included relevant figures like Art Garfunkel, of the duo Simon Garfunkel, and Brian Wilson, of the group The Beach Boys, nominated it as the second best song of all time, only surpassed by Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan. The truth is, there's an irrefutable fact. They still use it to close most of their concerts, because no matter how many years pass, Satisfaction remains a cry of independence and defiant attitude. Before we continue, I'd like to know, what's your favorite decade of rock? Leave it in the comments, I'll read you. Let's move on. Number 9. Ticket to Ride by the Beatles. This Beatles classic marked a change in their sound. Released in 1965, recorded at Abbey Road Studios, Ticket to Ride moved away from more conventional pop with an innovative drum pattern by Ringo Starr and a more experimental structure. The song was by John Lennon, credited to Lennon-McCartney. Although Lennon said Paul's collaboration was minor, in the way that Ringo played the drums, McCartney responded by saying, "We sat down and wrote it together. About 60% of it, sat down and worked for 3 hours writing the song." Lennon said the sped up part of the song, "My Baby Don't Care," was one of his favorite. Little bits. The song became an instant hit, and made it clear that the Beatles were evolving toward more complex and ambitious music. The song is confusing, and there are several possible explanations to this day, such as a British train ticket to the town of Ryde on the Isle of Wight, as Paul McCartney told Barry Miles, a girl out of the narrator's life, a phrase from John Lennon about the health cards given to workers in Hamburg in the early 60s, as Don Shore told Steve Turner, since the Beatles played in Hamburg during their early years, and in the local slang, Ryde was a reference to having relations. There's also one that goes back to Lennon's childhood, during the time when his mother left the family and the possibility of seeing Little Richard in Hamburg, and he said, "If I got my ticket, can I ride?" The original song was included by United Artists in the release of 8 Arms to Hold You. This was the original title of the Beatles' second film. The title was changed to Help after the single was released. After the Beatles' breakup, Lennon claimed with pride that it was the first heavy metal song in history due to its bass lines, repetitive drums, and loaded guitar lines. Given that notion, it seems ironic that the Carpenters turned it into a ballad in late 1969 for their debut album Offering and only reached 54 on the 100 in early 1970. To this day, its fresh and energetic sound continues to captivate new generations, so much so that in 2004, Rolling Stone magazine placed Ticket to Ride at number 384 on the Rolling Stone list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. My Generation by The Who. If there's a song that defines the rebellion of rock, it's My Generation. Released in 1965, it captured the youthful frustration of the era with its explosive bass line and the intentional stutter of Roger Daltrey. All the band members were between 20 and 23 years old at the time, and its composer, Pete Townshend, wrote it thinking about expressing how alone he felt in the world. In fact, the passage of time terrified Townshend to such an extent that, on one occasion, he shared that he thought he'd die when he reached the age of 30. Initially, Townshend conceived the song to be a blues in the style of some of his influences, like John Lee Hooker, as the first performance was inspired by Young Man Blues by Mose Allison, a song the band would later perform. That's how Pete recalled it in his autobiography, Who I Am, creating different sets of verses for the song and 3 very different demos. In fact, it's been said at times that the stutter with which singer Roger Daltrey begins, "Why don't you all fuck fade away," might have been inspired by Hooker's style. However, producer Shel Talmy often insists it was due to a fortunate accident. By the way, the BBC banned the song for a time, considering Daltrey's stutter offensive. Be that as it may, the song gained a faster tempo to reflect all that anguish and frustration, which is channeled in the form of electricity through the song. And a peculiar detail of My Generation is that bassist John Entwistle included one of the first bass solos in history. In fact, it's curious because when the band appeared playing the song on television, the cameras often focused on the guitar during the solo, and Townshend's fingers weren't moving, logically, in line with what was playing. Keith Moon's drum solo and the defiant attitude of the lyrics turned it into an anthem of British rock. 60 years after its release, My Generation still sounds fresh and full of the power and rage with which it was recorded. And thank goodness, because it almost wasn't recorded. Thank goodness one of the band's managers, Chris Stamp, was around, who heard one of those bluesy versions of the song and suggested that piece should be recorded. Well, his contribution must have been so important that Townshend himself was surprised by the suggestion, as they hadn't planned to do anything with it. Before we continue, let me ask you a question. Are you learning with this video? Then don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Number 7. Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan.
How does it feel?
When Dylan released Like a Rolling Stone in 1965, it changed the rules of the game. It's over 6 minutes and lyrics loaded with irony and reflection. It redefined what a rock song could be. I wrote it. It didn't fail. It was straight. Bob Dylan mentioned about one of his greatest songs before recording 1965. There's no better description of Like a Rolling Stone, of its revolutionary design and executioner, of the young man who had just turned 24 when he created it. Al Cooper, who played the organ in the session, recalls, "There was no sheet music, it was totally by ear. It was completely disorganized, totally punk. It just happened." The most surprising thing about Like a Rolling Stone is that it was unprecedented. The impressionistic voltage in Dylan's language, the intensely personal accusation in his voice, and the apocalyptic charge of Cooper's gospel organ, plus the strong spirals of Mike Bloomfield's Telecaster guitar in that first recording on June 16. No other pop song has challenged and transformed the commercial rules and artistic conventions of its time, of all time. Just weeks before, when he finished a tour in England, Dylan began writing an extended piece of verses on it over 20 pages, and another 6 that was just a rhythm on paper about my steady, complacent hatred, something I believed honest. Later, back home in Woodstock, New York, for 3 days on the eve of June, Dylan refined the length of that confrontational chorus. 4 more verses are a deep metaphor and concise truths. The first 2, kidding you with "Didn't you just knock me out?" He confessed to Rolling Stone in 1998, "When I got to the Jugglers and the Horse and the Princesses, it started to be too much." Before going to Columbia Records studios in New York to finish it, he called Bloomfield, the guitarist of the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, to come to Woodstock to learn the song. "He told me, I don't want you to play any of that B.B. King style crap, none of that damn blues," recalled Bloomfield, who passed away in 1981. "I want you to play something else." Dylan later said similar things to the rest of the studio band, which included pianist Paul Griffin, bassist Russ Savakus, and drummer Bobby Gregg. "I told them how to play on it, and if they didn't want to, they couldn't play with me." In the same way Dylan shaped the roots of folk music as he wanted, he transformed the popular song with the content and ambition behind Like a Rolling Stone, an anthem of freedom and defiance of norms. Today, it remains a masterpiece that reminds us that music can also be poetry. Number 6. Mr. Tambourine Man by the Byrds. The Byrds' version of this Bob Dylan classic took folk rock to new heights in 1965. Composed by Dylan in 1964, he premiered it at various performances, like the Newport Folk Festival that same year. He initially recorded it with Ramblin' Jack Elliott for his 4th album, Another Side of Bob Dylan, but he wasn't satisfied and didn't include it. Months later, the Byrds' manager, thanks to Bob Dylan's publisher, got hold of the sheet music and an acetate test pressing of the recording. Both artists were also tied to the same label, Columbia Records. With their vocal harmonies and the unmistakable sound of the 12-string Rickenbacker guitar, the band achieved a sound that would define an entire era. The brilliance of Jim McGuinn's guitar stood out in a track produced for the CBS label by Doris Day's son, Terry Melcher. They were supported by prestigious musicians like Hal Blaine, drums, Larry Knechtel bass, Jerry Cole rhythm guitar, and Leon Russell, electric piano. Their arrangements and rich vocal harmonies enriched Dylan's original theme. The recording immediately reached the top of the charts and even revolutionized country folk, even accelerating Dylan's electrification of his sound. They sold over 1 million copies. Although the author himself said on occasion that he was inspired by the image of a musician shaking a tambourine, other versions suggest it describes a trip he took in his youth from Los Angeles to New York. To make it more entertaining, he sent packages of marijuana to various post offices along the route, thus avoiding the danger of being caught by the police in possession of the drugs. Therefore, the Tambourine Man could well be Dylan's dealer. The drug version is also supported by the film Dangerous Minds. The true story remains unconfirmed even after 60 years since the song was written. But the only certain thing is that, whatever its original message, every time it's performed, it spreads a feeling of joy and peace despite the deep loneliness, sadness, and despair it aims to convey. Beyond double meanings, seismologies, or open interpretations, the lyrics tell us the story of a lonely and sad man who has trouble falling asleep and asks the Tambourine Man to play a song for him. Its hypnotic atmosphere and influence on folk rock have kept it relevant for decades. Number 5. We Gotta Get Out of This Place by The Animals.
Oh, your time is due.
In 1965, this song became an anthem for young people seeking to escape a monotonous life. The powerful voice of Eric Burdon and the marked bass of the introduction gave it an air of urgency and determination. It has become an iconic song in its genre and was immensely popular among U.S. Armed Forces soldiers during the Vietnam War. Mann and Weil wrote and recorded We Gotta Get Out of This Place as a demo, with Mann singing and playing the piano. It was intended for the Righteous Brothers, for whom they had written the #1 hit, You've Lost That Loving Feeling. But Mann landed a recording contract, and his label, Redbird Records, wanted him to release it. Meanwhile, record executive Alan Klein heard it and handed the demo to Mickey Most, the producer of The Animals. Most had already received a request from Brill Building songwriters for material for the group's next recording session, and The Animals recorded it before Mann. In The Animals version, the lyrics were slightly rearranged and reworded from the demo, and began with an allusion to a place, though different from what the songwriters had in mind, that was often interpreted as fitting for the group's industrial and working-class origins in Newcastle upon Tyne. The arrangement featured a distinctive lead bass by group member Chas Chandler. This was the first single not recorded by the original lineup, following the departure of keyboardist Alan Price and his replacement by Dave Roberry. It showcased one of the typically raw and fierce vocals of singer Eric Burdon. Rolling Stone magazine described the overall effect as a tough white blues treatment by The Animals. As Burdon said, "What suited our attitude? We just adapted to our own way." The song reached number 2 on the UK singles chart on August 14, 1965, held back by Help by the Beatles. The following month, it reached number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the US, its best position there. In Canada, the song also reached number 2 on September 20, 1965. In 2004, it ranked number 233 on Rolling Stone's list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. It's also on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's list of 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. Today, it remains a rock classic with a message that never goes out of style. Before we continue, let me ask you a question. Are you learning with this video? Then don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Number 4. Tired of Waiting for You by The Kinks. The Kinks. The Kinks had already made their mark with You Really Got Me, but in 1965, they proved their versatility with Tired of Waiting for You. In a world where songs are often composed in a recording studio or in the silence of a room, Tired of Waiting for You by The Kinks shows us that creativity can emerge from the most unusual places. This iconic track not only became a milestone by reaching 1 on the UK charts, but also marked a significant shift in the band's sound and artistic perspective. But how was this song born? One that has remained relevant in the history of rock. According to Ray Davies, the band's leader and main songwriter, a captivating melody emerged during a trip to his recording studio. It was during a break at a cafe that the song's lyrics were sketched out. This spontaneous moment is a testament to the essence of the creative process, where inspiration often arrives unexpectedly and turns into a lasting musical product. Its relaxed rhythm, combined with Ray Davies' melancholic voice, shows the more introspective side of the band. The song is a clear example of the Kinks' artistic evolution. From their explosive debut with You Really Got Me, which captured the world's attention with its powerful guitar riff, Tired of Waiting for You, reveals a more melodic and reflective side. The track is characterized by a melancholic tone, with a sophisticated structure and a relaxed rhythm, thus showing the band's maturity in their ability to explore deeper and more complex emotions. This shift not only diversified their repertoire, but also solidified their place in the British Invasion, a musical phenomenon that transformed the rock scene worldwide. The impact of Tired of Waiting for You on the music industry was significant. With its distinctive sound and introspective lyrics, the Kinks left an indelible mark on rock history. The band quickly became one of the most influential of its time, inspiring generations of musicians across various disciplines. Ray Davies' work, in particular, is celebrated for its ability to capture the human experience through music, addressing universal themes that transcend time and space. To this day, it remains an essential piece of British rock. Number 3. For Your Love by the Yardbirds.
For your love.
This 1965 track was a turning point in British rock. It was written by English songwriter Graham Gouldman, who later founded the band 10, but achieved greater success when performed in 1965 by the Yardbirds, a band that has gone down in music history for having featured, at different times, 3 of the greatest guitarists rock has ever produced: Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page. On this occasion, the Yardbirds, with Eric Clapton on guitar, fused rock and pop in an innovative way. The story goes that Gouldman wrote the song when he was just 19 years old while working at an electronic supply store near the Sulphur Dock. At the time, he was playing in a band with his friends from Manchester called the Mockingbirds. On the song's origin, he recalled in an interview, "I was sleeping since the night before I had played with the Mockingbirds until dawn, and in the time between waking up and getting ready to go to work, I wrote parts of the song. Also, many times at the store, no one came to buy, which left me a lot of free time to write songs. I also took advantage of the lunch hour where I sat down to write and arrange songs." The reason he decided to write this song came from the frustration of searching for a hit to record as new material for his band, in this case, some cover that would pave the way to success. The Yardbirds version reached the 3rd spot on the UK singles chart, and surprisingly, in the United States, it reached 6, which was quite a feat for this London band. In 1965, the Mockingbirds were backstage at the famous BBC show Top of the Pops, broadcast from Manchester, where the Yardbirds were set to perform this song. Gouldman recalled that moment. "It was a strange moment when the Yardbirds appeared on the show playing For Your Love. Everyone was screaming and clapping around them, and there I was, a member of an unknown group. I felt very strange that night hearing them play my song." Despite the great success that For Your Love brought to the Yardbirds, it also caused a big problem for this British band, because they decided to record it and include it on the album they released in August 1965. Guitarist Eric Clapton, who played guitar on the track but was quite furious, left the band to join John Mayall, the Blues Breakers. Despite that, the song remains a milestone in rock history. Number 2. California Girls by the Beach Boys. Few songs capture the spirit of summer like California Girls. Released in 1965, its orchestral intro and vocal harmonies made it an instant hit. It's a pop classic that celebrates the beauty and lifestyle of California women. Through its lyrics, the band takes a tour of different regions of the United States, highlighting the attractive qualities of women from each area, from the avant-garde fashion of East Coast girls to the warmth of Midwestern farmers' daughters. However, the chorus reiterates the singer's wish that all women could be like California girls, suggesting an idealization of Californian women as the epitome of beauty and charm. The song also reflects the relaxed and sunny West Coast lifestyle, with mentions of the beach, tanning, and French bikini fashion. This anthem to California women becomes an ode to youth, beauty, and the beach culture that characterized California's image in the 1960 when the song was released. The Beach Boys' music, with its vocal harmonies and catchy rhythms, became synonymous with surf rock and the youth culture of the time. In a broader context, California Girls can be seen as an expression of fascination with feminine diversity and beauty, as well as a reflection of the pop culture of the 60s, which valued freedom, optimism, and the pursuit of pleasure. The song remains a pop music icon and a reminder of a golden era of American music. Brian Wilson demonstrated his genius with a sophisticated production that influenced pop and rock music for decades to come. To this day, it continues to transport us to the California coast with every listen. Number 1. Help by the Beatles.
I need somebody help, not just
1965 was a key year for the Beatles, and Help was one of their most significant songs. Written by John Lennon at a time of personal crisis, the song blends a vibrant rhythm with lyrics of genuine desperation. It was the theme song for their film of the same name and marked the beginning of the band's transition to a more introspective and sophisticated sound. God, they've changed the title of the film. Now it's going to be called Help, so I have to write a song called Help. That's how the creative process began for one of the most important songs in pop history, and one of the most honest by John Lennon, according to his own opinion. I was actually crying out for help, but I didn't realize it at the time. I did it because it was a commission for the film, but later I really knew I was crying out for help. At the start of 1965, the Beatles had achieved something no human had accomplished before with such clarity, unanimity, and universality. True, unequivocal planetary glory. Of course, for them it was fun, but it was also a mental challenge. Being adored and revered at every step wasn't easy for any of them, but perhaps especially for Lennon. I was going through my Fat Elvis' stage. At the end of the day, they had an undeniable masterpiece on their hands. A single that would unleash madness when played on the 1965 tour of the United States and Canada, and it was their calling card on The Ed Sullivan Show. When he played at the legendary Shea Stadium concert in front of nearly 60,000 people, there were fainting spells all over the stands. He got very fat, very insecure, and lost the real Elvis in himself. The author of the most tender cry for help pop has ever produced would say years later, 60 years later, help still resonates with anyone who has ever needed a little support in their life. These songs are true rock gems that have withstood the test of time. Which one is your favorite? Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey, I invite you to watch this other video where I'll tell you something amazing. Click here.